There is one wealth strategy that's consistent over the years, historically and in present time, that shows you how the wealthy produce large masses, large amounts of value, a large amounts of asset. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, and we're going to talk about this historical method that is true today. And when you get down into the data, you'll start seeing how this is a consistent wealth strategy, not only to maintain wealth and earnings, but to multiply the value of what you have. See, typical individuals earn money, they'll pay taxes first, they'll pay expenses, they'll address debt, they'll address liability. They'll typically do all of that as soon as they receive their income. That tends to be their primary objective. Then they're going to worry about investments, savings, security, possibly buying assets. This is a typical way of doing things because it is conditioned behavior. Not because it's the right thing to do, but it's conditioned behavior. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that personal finance forums in the popular media reinforce the fact that we are to consume and buy things. Not only are we to consume and buy things, but paying taxes is something that other people are imposing upon you as far as a punishment. Let me explain what that means. When they talk about taxing the rich, they're essentially saying to regular people is that, yeah, I know you got to pay taxes, but all these rich people are making you pay taxes because they aren't paying enough, and so we all have to chip in and pay together. The truth of it is the government didn't want you to pay taxes. They would just not charge you taxes, or they would charge everybody the same percentage of taxes and take away these loopholes and take away these different types of tax incentives and breaks. That's not the way it is. So you're being conditioned to spend a certain way and to consume rather than to produce. See, all wealthy individuals from time immemorial produce. They produce far more of what the marketplace wants than it costs them to produce, and the surplus of that is their income, or at least handled in a different way. So the first thing is that wealthy individuals have multiple streams of income. So they don't just have salary income. They don't just have a contract income. They may have organizations that feed them income. They may have investments that feed them income. They might have assets that cash flow. And this is something that is accumulated over time, but it's accumulated because the flow of income into a wealthy family. Now, typically, this is not done at an individual level. It's done as a family unit or an extended family unit. And so within your own household, you can apply this today and start increasing your wealth. But their income tends to first go into assets that cash flow. Their income first goes into their investments. It first goes into their assets, and then money comes from the income of those assets and the income of those investments to cover expenses. So I was talking to an individual, multimillionaire, and he is telling me about this scheme he has in order to pay for his kids' college. So the daughter wants to go to college. He tells his daughter, you will pay for your own college. She says, but Dad, you have more money than you know what to do with. You could pay for college. And he says, I don't know that college is a good investment for me. So he's speaking from his own position. And the daughter says, well, she starts pleading her case and that a college degree is going to help her do this, and it's going to help her do that, and she's going to meet all these great people. And he says, if it's so good, why don't you pay for college? And she says, well, I don't have any money. So there's a catch-22 here. If the college is such a benefit, as the daughter is explaining, should the father invest in the child's education? Well, he comes up with this scheme. Like I said, wealthy people think differently. And whether you're wealthy at $1 million in net worth or $100 million in net worth or billions of dollars in net worth, looking at this situation outside of the consumer perspective, he wants to invest in his daughter, but he also wants her to learn a valuable lesson. And so what he does is he teaches his daughter, so he's in real estate, he teaches his daughter how to evaluate properties, and he finds a cash-flowing property in which he buys for himself, in which he assigns the cash flow to the daughter if she manages the house. So there's a very specific amount of things that she's got to do. And so he builds a portfolio of assets that he owns, yet the daughter, in exchange for part-time work, so rather than her working at McDonald's, rather than her working on campus, she's able to set up the computer and do this work that he needs done, primarily the marketing of rental properties and the day-to-day bookkeeping of rental properties. She particularly was interested in becoming an accountant, and so this fits well within her needs and her skill set. She is assigned the cash flow from the rental property. So he makes $0 off these rental properties. The money goes directly to his daughter, not to her pocket, but pays tuition. So she's getting her school paid for in exchange for work. It's like a work exchange program. He maintains the asset. He owns the asset. He holds the asset. He has spent no money at all for his daughter's education. Now, the ex-wife, on the other hand, is very upset about this scheme. The ex-wife, who is ex-wife for a reason, is saying, well, don't you support your daughter's education? Don't you want her to do well in life? Don't you want to have a little bit of pocket money? Don't you want her to enjoy her college experience? Well, he is providing these things, just not in the typical way. Because again, regular people think differently about money than the wealthy individuals. And what does that mean? Well, that means that you can learn how to become wealthy. You can learn how to build assets. You can learn how to grow your investments. You can know how to have security in your old age. It doesn't matter where you start today. You can start right now with a different set of thinking. So let me summarize. So his scheme is to buy additional rental properties, hire his daughter to work for him at a wage that pays for her college, and she never touches the money herself. The money goes directly to the college itself. So what he's actually also done is prevented an income event for his daughter who is in college. So she's not avoiding taxes. This is a legal structure here. He can pay her out the $10,000 a year, which she can receive tax-free. But the benefit from his company of paying to her tuition is actually an employee benefit program. So she is a family household, a family employee or contractor. I don't know. I didn't go into details of how he set that up, but she is receiving as his daughter a certain amount of income a year because he did give her a little pocket money. She's going to need fuel to check on these houses, and she's going to need internet access, and she's going to need this certain things as far as a small office is concerned. Yet the tuition paid directly to the school was done through a benefits program within his company. Now, by the way, any of his employees were open to this program. This wasn't just for his daughter. He's syndicating the value to any of his employees. The fact is he didn't have any employees. He just had one assistant who all their children were already graduated school or out in the workforce. But here's the thing. The daughter gets her tuition paid for, but also gains a valuable skill. So wealthy people don't just spend money differently. They don't just invest money differently. They actually build assets in people. So they're going to leverage relationships forward. So this daughter is now interested. She's already interested in accounting. She's learning to get an accounting degree. She's working in the field with practical experience. She's getting her tuition paid for, so she has no student debt. And then when she graduates, his company can write a letter of recommendation for the daughter to become an accountant. Now, he didn't tell me whether or not she stayed in bookkeeping and accounting, because the majority of people who graduate from college, they don't work in the area of their degree. Oh, none of that matters. The scheme he had here is a different model. He put his money first in investments, first and foremost over his own children. Despicable wealthy people. But again, he gave the daughter so much more than what money can buy. And that's why we talk about wealth isn't just what money can buy. Because in this strategy, this historical strategy that's been used for generations, that's been used for centuries, that's been used in every country around the world, this particular model works wherever you are and however you start. Because it, again, builds assets that cash flow, generates multiple streams of income, manages your expenses differently. So, for example, a wealthy person is going to pay their taxes as an expense. So they're going to look at how they can reduce that expense. They're also going to pay debt as an expense. So they're going to only create debt which they can pay for with what's left over after their investments and proceeds. It's a different world. And so what is this approach called? Well, in modern context, it's called buy, borrow, and invest, where basically all the income of a wealthy individual goes into investments first. It goes into the multiplication of capital through passive means, the multiplication of capital by owning equity, the multiplication of capital by building a portfolio, and then it goes into expenses based according to the proceeds of the investments. Now, what we end up with is a couple loops. So we have one loop, which is income to investment, and the dividends of the investment come back into income. And then it goes back, some of that goes back into investments, and then some of it goes into expenses. And so if you've got a copy of my percentage-based budget program, you'll see that of every dollar you receive, a percentage goes into your wealth account, a percentage goes into your charitable account, a percentage goes into your expenses. Then from your expenses, a percentage goes into these other categories, but it's not consumption-based, it's production-based. It is producing far more than you earn. And so you can start at any time. It is a methodology that works whether you have $1 in your pocket or $1,000 in your pocket. It's a producer mentality. So let's go over these steps. I've got quite a few of them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are more, but again, if you can't work these 9, if you can't start using these 9 in your day-to-day life to convert your income into wealth, then having 50 strategies is just going to be confusing. So we talked about how typical people use money. And again, money is a utility tool. Typical people consume versus produce. This is very important to know. You should be taking notes. You should turn off the distractions, take the notes. Now, here are the 9 points. In the buy, borrow, and invest strategy, of which you can read online, there's different ways of describing it. What I like to look at this is called generational investing. It's building of assets. There probably isn't a specific name, but the characteristics are seen throughout history, and understanding these 9 points will help you recognize these. So number 1 is to acquire assets at cash flow. We're not buying liabilities. We're not giving money away without purpose. We're not wasting money by consuming beyond our needs. In fact, a lot of wealthy people live so far below their means, you wouldn't know that they're wealthy. Number 2 is we're going to invest cash flow in growth. So of the money we are earning from these multiple streams of income, which could include investments, rental properties, leases, business of your own, so many different things, by the way. And a lot of people who are feel like they're stuck with that one active form of income, they have access to the passive forms, but because, again, they're following the consumer condition mentality, they aren't able to do this in a consistent way until these 9 strategies or these 9 approaches have been revealed to them. Number 3, tax strategy that reduces costs. Remember, the wealthy see taxes as an expense, which they will legally reduce using the available terms. And by the way, there's one strategy in here that you can also use to have the tax laws changed. And so a lot of these wealthy individuals, even though politicians are screaming that they should tax the rich, they don't actually tax the rich because that would reduce capital from the marketplace. Wealthy individuals are not like Scrooge McDuck with piles of money everywhere. The money is engaged. The money is active. The money is out working for them. The money, in fact, can include the benefits they're giving to employees in order to keep employees showing up and performing work. Of course, they're going to pay the employee less than the employee can produce at the office place, because if they paid them more, they eventually cannot maintain the employee. So we're going to structure to protect assets. Number 5 is we're going to borrow to cover overhead. There's a reason that businesses get lines of credit rather than just using their available capital. Most of their capital is in reserve. And when that reserve, so let's say your wealth account, is generating a certain percentage return in a passive manner, then we have to be more mindful about how we spend the other money. So for example, in a time of low interest rates, if you can borrow money at 2%, but your money in reserve is making 5%, that's a 3% spread. So why would you want to spend money that you could invest when you can borrow money to cover expenses? Now, of course, you've been careful about your expenses. You're producing rather than consuming. And so you can borrow as much money that's necessary. And the money itself almost becomes an insurance policy against a large economic downturn because, again, it's other people's money. Now, there's one of these other strategies, number 8, is other people's money too. And there's other ways to use that. We'll talk about that soon. But the number 6 is the leveraging of relationships is going to happen in being able to borrow to cover overhead, but they're paying back the bank's money with money generated through the delivery of products and services. And so there's customer relationships, there's vendor relationships, there's stockholder, shareholder, stakeholder relationships, and all of this together is managed to understand the cost of capital. So again, if you're borrowing money at 5%, you add a potential inflation of 4% and a potential return on that money of 4%. And so 5 plus 4, basically you got to make 9% in return or you don't borrow the money. Managing that cost of capital is where you're going to make sure that you spend far less than you earn so that the surplus can be reinvested. And then now instead of a process of consumption, you have a process of growth. Now there is a ramp-up period. It takes a little bit of time. And that's where other people's money comes in. Very often if you have a good idea, you can write a business plan, you can go to the bank and get other people's money. So if you have $0 available today and you have a great idea and you can demonstrate the work, or maybe you have a skill or a subject matter expertise, you can leverage that by solving problems in a marketplace in order to use other people's money. Your customer's money is other people's money. And then finally, 9, a producer mentality. That's what wraps it all up. Now, again, there are other strategies, but wealthy individuals are going to buy assets that cash flow. They're going to borrow money to cover overhead, and then they're going to invest the difference. Now, if you're able to do this on a consistent manner because you've adjusted the mindset, because you have structure in place, because you're buying assets rather than liabilities, then the only thing that can happen to the money is for it to grow. That's just natural state. Now, when you understand these things, by the way, you know you don't have any disregard for the wealthy. You realize how easy it is to turn income into wealth. You start realizing that many of these wealthy people are no different than anybody else. The only difference is they accumulate assets, they accumulate cash flow rather than disperse it. Now, if everybody implemented this strategy, there is possibility that it would bring down everybody to an average. So there are active campaigns to present wealthy people as evil, that you don't want to be one of them, and that poor people are noble, and it's better to be poor. Well, it's easy to become poor with a consumer mindset. It is difficult to be poor with a producer mindset. Because again, the first time that you have a skill or something of value and you take the time to research an audience and you go out there and get in front of that audience, they have no choice but to pay you money. Because again, you're solving problems. Even the consumerism solves a problem. It solves a problem to maintain wealth in concentration, and it also solves a problem for the individual who has an emotional need for something rather than a logical need for something. When you understand these things, this is what we go into in the coaching program, and this is what we help you implement in your life, because understanding and implementation are sometimes two different things. But these 9 principles are found in every wealthy family throughout generations, every empire, every government with stability, by the way, the income to investment is seen very often in what's called a sovereign fund, where the country takes all of its tax proceeds, invests them in infrastructure and in cash flowing projects or investments, and then the citizen now has the benefit of not just the taxes that were collected, but the income from the rest of their taxes. Now, a lot of people, and one of the reasons we have to do a mindset in the coaching area is because a lot of people think, well, if I'm accumulating assets, am I taking away assets from other people? Well, not really, because wealth is measured in more than money. We also have multiple currencies that have different valuations in the marketplace, and the system would fluctuate whether or not you are involved in the system. So, for example, if you show up on an island and everybody's got gold everywhere, and they don't believe the gold is valuable, but you take that gold to a different island and everybody wants that gold, then the gold, which has intrinsic value in the fact that it's a metal and it has certain properties, but the perceptive value is completely different in two environments. By valuing something on island B, you're not taking away from island A if you have fair and equitable trade. What do I mean by equitable trade? It means both parties had agreed on the trade. So you've provided them something of value. So if you brought them beads or clothing or textiles or machinery, and you traded it for their gold, you don't diminish the other person. You don't diminish the other team because you gave them something of value. Now, is it your place to tell them what they value? No, it's not. It's not your place to force people to conform to your belief system. And so if your belief system is to become a producer, it's not your job to make other people become producers if they want to consume. Now, within your family household, and let's get back to the example of this multimillionaire that I was having this conversation with. Let's go back to this example. Where your responsibility lies is making sure that your family members and immediate network are on the producer mindset rather than the consumer mindset. So this individual bought assets that cash flowed, gave an opportunity to his daughter to earn money. She paid her tuition. She would have had to work a part-time job either way. Ultimately, he taught her skills and gave her insights that are useful as an accountant, because that's the career area she wanted to be in. And the insights also will help her with her future clients. There's nothing but value in that. Now, the reason people will shame the millionaires and multimillionaires is because it's useful for both the multimillionaires to have it obscured about how they're able to create wealth, because when you realize it literally is 9 foundational principles. Now, there could be 30 or 40 other things that can be done, but these 9 are foundational to wealth throughout history, wealth throughout generations. And there's just 2 mindsets, consumer mindset and a producer mindset. Now, the producer mindset does enable people to consume, because if there's nobody producing goods and services, there are no goods and services to consume. So any gimmick or manipulation that politicians use to go after the rich to pay their, quote, fair share, you have to ask more questions. Like, what is a fair share? Because somebody who knows how to make money, they are literally making money. And if you charge them more in taxes, they'll just raise the prices of everything because they know their math. They know their expenses versus their income. The ratio of income versus expenses is a moderating activity. Now, again, when we sit down in coaching, we go over mindset, we go over strategy, we go over actual implementation of the strategy. Some people ask, why is the program so expensive? And I say, it's not expensive. You just don't have enough money, because we're actually implementing what we're doing here. And then once we start implementing, there's the multiples that start creating, and then this becomes part of an expense inside of a business or something, and it's lowering your taxes. All of that structure, you have to be willing to understand and invest in. And that's why, again, we ask you to work with a certified financial planner, with a CPA, with a lawyer, with people who have expertise that can help you. And that's the last point I want to give you here when I talk about other people's money and I talk about leveraging relationships forward. You want to surround yourself with the right people who are going to be able to help you make good decisions and then implement those decisions so you can move along to that next channel, that next income. A lot of people are typically consuming and overwhelmed by the consumption and only able to work one position, and they don't have the clarity of mind to apply their earnings, and they end up dissipating all those earnings before retirement. Where wealthy individuals have the focus, the discipline of mind, the skill set, the understanding, which you can learn, and they surround themselves by reinforcing factors, which include coaches, includes financial advisors or different types of advisors. It includes environments where sometimes they don't even have access to their own money. If you're interested in these types of things, if you want a practical approach to implement, not spend a lot of money, but again, cycle that money to create more income, to create more free net cash flow, assets to cash flow, then you're in the right place. As a podcast listener, you can certainly ask your questions and you can definitely give your comments. But of these factors, this is a well understood concept. I would encourage you to give it a try. If you have any questions about this podcast, I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. You can visit us at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com and go to the contact page to ask your questions or get our free newsletter or other resources that are available on that site. These methods work, and they will work for generations. It's not my job to make sure you use them. So please take notes and implement. This really ought to be a dialogue for high-income professionals, for business owners and executives, because these methods are easier today to implement than ever before. And we can prove that by looking at society, about how much wealthier we are today, how much healthier we are today, how many things are actually going well. Once you remove the veil of distraction and start implementing these methods and technologies, you will be so busy enjoying life and the fruits of labor that you aren't going to desire those material things that really don't pay. Again, if you have any questions, visit us at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. And this has been about how wealth is built across the ages, 9 key and foundational principles to build wealth. Thanks for listening.